Hey everybody, Brett from AstartesGaming here, back with something a little bit different today. I would like to show you guys how I mod Mount & Blade Warband. In particular, I want to show you guys how I do some of the custom armors that you see in my Clash of Kings series. And if I do any, other Warband series, I'll probably do something similar in those as well. But yeah, this has been sort of, highly requested, and so I figured I'd go ahead and do it. I'm not sure what exactly we're going to make today, but we are going to do some sort of custom armor, and I'll show you guys how to get it in the game, what you need to do in order to make it, and also how to get it to your character once it's in the game. So there's a couple programs you're going to need to do this. The first one being Morgh's Mount & Blade Editor, which is what you're seeing on my screen right now. That's going to be very critical to get the model and textures that you create into the game. It'll basically make the armor into an item that's usable or playable. The other program that's going to be very important for this is OpenBRF, which you can see here. This is where you actually work with the textures and the various models. You're going to need GIMP, GIMP or Photoshop or whatever image manipulation program you prefer, I guess. And then you'll need some form of word processor. I recommend a scripting word processor, such as like Sublime Text, but any word processor will do, whether it's Microsoft Word or Notepad. But again, I highly recommend a scripting one. I will provide links for all these things in the description, with the exception of GIMP, because GIMP should be easy enough to find, or I imagine that if you don't have GIMP, you have some sort of image manipulation program on your thing. By the way, you are going to need a DDS plugin for GIMP or for Photoshop or whatever you choose to use. I'm going to have the DDS plugin for GIMP linked in the description, because that can be a little bit tricky to find. But if you're using Photoshop or something, you'll have to track that down. But you are going to need to be able to work with DDS files, because that is the format that all of the game textures are in. So first thing you're going to want to do is install all these programs if you do not have them installed already. I'm going to assume that you know how to install programs if you're trying to mod a game. And so what you'll want to do from there is you're going to want to open up your Steam and find Mount & Blade Warband. And to get to your Warband files, you're going to go to Properties, local files, Browse Local Files, and that's going to open your Warband folder. Or if you already know the location of it, just go to it. And then you're going to want to go to Modules. And this is where you're going to decide what mod or what module that you want to work on. So it works basically the same regardless of which one you pick. Native can be a little bit more complicated because not all of the assets that Native uses are in Native. Some of them are in, just kind of in the main files. But otherwise, it's identical. I'm going to do a Clash of Kings since that's my most popular series, and I know everybody loves Game of Thrones. So we're going to work on a Clash of Kings. And so if you have OpenBRF installed, when you go to your resource folder, you should see the OpenBRF icon next to any BRF files you have. And so these are all the various different assets in the game. In this particular mod, anything listed as ACOK_1 is a scene asset. So these are like the different buildings and trees and things that you'll find in the game. And then once you get past those down to right about here where they stop having the 1, these are all the various different like items, such as swords, shields, armors, things like that. Now, for those of you looking to edit the Game of Thrones looking TV show style armors, you're gonna look for ACOK bill weight, which is this one right here. So let's go ahead and open that one, and you guys can see what that looks like. I do not need this open anymore. That was just to show you what the program looked like. So here we have the Billwit resource pack, which is going to be all of the Game of Thronesy TV show looking armors that you probably want to get your hands on and customize. So that's what we're going to do today. Now, the way that this program works is really, really cool, and especially for this particular resource pack, because the way the modder created it, it's very, very modular, and so there's a lot of mixing and matching you can do. I am not going to show you how to model something from scratch in this tutorial, so I apologize if that's what you're looking for. I'm going to show you how to take existing stuff in the game and create something new and unique with it. So the way the program works here is you have a base model, like so. And then if you look at this, you can see that all 3 or 4 of these have the same name, but they're all different models, and they have like 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. So the way these work is they basically get layered on top of one another in the order that you see there. So the base model, and then 0.1 will be the first layer, 0.2 will be the second layer, and 0.3 will be the third layer on top of that. And you can see that they combine into a slightly, more detailed and interesting armor. And the cool thing about this is that these can sort of be mixed and matched onto really anything you want, so long as they don't clip really badly. And even if they do, I mean, you can still use it. It's just, obviously, it's going to look a little funny. So, for example, if we wanted to, we could put the fur and the cape from this onto the Stormland armor right here. So let's do that real quick. Basically, what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate these. So right-click, hit duplicate, and you'll get 2 copies. Move it down underneath the one that you're working on. And then just go to group rename, so you can rename them both at the same time. And then everything before the decimal, we're going to change to Stormland_light, just like the model that we're trying to add them to. It doesn't really matter what they're numbered right now. They'll still add to this just fine. But when you're modding, you want to mod it. You want to be consistent and precise with your work. And so always start with 1. Don't do this right here. But obviously, it doesn't actually really have any effect on the game. It looks a bit weird, though, so let's actually copy this one in, too. And we can see what it looks like with this little, like, neck armor piece on there. So I want everything before that decimal point. Stormland_light. And so now we can see it with that armor on there. And yeah. You've got little holes here because this is designed to be used with something with, like, shoulder plates, I imagine. But you can see there we put, like, some neck armor and some fur and a cloak on some Stormlands armor. So that's really cool. And you can do that with literally anything in any mod so long as it's set up like this. The majority of them do use, separate layers like this, but not all of them will. So certain things you're just not going to be able to pick and choose from, which is unfortunate. But you still do have quite a lot to play with. So let's find something to retexture now. So what I want to do is let's go down to the Riverlands, because there's some Riverlands armors I really like. And so I want to work on, let's take the heavy, for example. It's this one here. And I want to combine that with the standard, which is this one here. So I would like to take this yellow gambeson that's underneath the leather scale, and I want to add that to this underneath the little chainmail shirt that they have going on here. So I think what we'll do is let's take the sleeves out. We're going to make the sleeves the yellow gambeson. We'll leave the chainmail right here, and then we'll replace these leather flaps with the gambeson as well. And then we can decide to either put these shoulder pads on there, or maybe we could do like this style, like a heavy, plated northern armor. We'll see what looks best. I imagine that this might look better on Riverland's armor, but we'll play around with it and see. So the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to open up all the textures for these, and you can find these here. So the material is basically this, and that combines the shader with the texture, the normal or bump map, and the specular map. So basically, if you're not too familiar with what these terms are, diffuse is literally your texture. This is what the image it's being applied to the model is. The bump or normal map, or height map, I guess I've heard it called as well, basically is going to add, I don't want to use the word texture again because I've already used that word, but like the coarseness and like I guess the bumps to the model. It adds, I guess like 3D detail to the texture is the best way to describe that. And then the specular map is basically how you determine which objects are shiny and which ones are like matte finish. So from there you can see that those will link you to the texture tab, which has all the different textures, whether they be diffuses, normal maps, or specular maps for all the different models. So we're going to want to find the ones for this guy and for the standard one. So we can see the texture is standard. I believe it's Riverland Standard 01, and then diffuse, normal, and specular. and for the heavy it should be the same but Riverlands heavy. So what we're going to want to do is we have our, I should probably close some of these. I don't need my videos open, I don't need my channel art stuff open. So we want to get back to our Clash of Kings folder, the main one in particular. And then from there, rather than resources this time, we're going to go to textures. And you can pretty much just, search these names. So we're going to type in Riverlands Heavy. And we want the specular. We do not need to load MIP maps for this, so uncheck that one. The normal map and the diffuse map. And then we're going to do the same thing for the Riverlands standard. And we'll open these up as well. There we go. So then we can go back to the main texture thing here. Let's get these out of the way because we're going to do a lot of retexturing for this, period. So we're not going to need those open right now. And then what we're going to want to do is basically for our two main textures, we're going to take one and drop it into the other. It really doesn't matter which way you go with it. Just make sure that you got both textures in one window. And you can close the other one. And then we're going to do the same thing for the specular maps. Drop that one in that one and close the other. And finally with the bump maps or normal maps. So we'll drop that one in that one and close those. So we've got all three of the different sets of textures we need. And now we can start doing some actual editing. And basically the way I like to do these is actually really, really simple. You don't need really any Photoshop or GIMP skill to do this. Just take about a 50 pixel brush, eraser actually I should say, with a really soft brush tip. And what we're going to do is just basically erase. So let's start with the arms first. I'll show you. So we're going to use the eraser tool for this one, and then we'll use the selection tool for these. But basically, oh, that's the wrong layer. We want to be on the correct layer, and we're just going to erase. That's all we're going to do. So you can see that we're going from chainmail to yellow gambeson just by erasing. And so now the sleeves are going to be yellow gambeson rather than chainmail. And so the other way we can do this is through the various selection tools. You're probably going to want to use the free select, and we're just going to grab all this and then delete it. That simple. So you're not actually doing any real retexturing yourself. I mean, this technically is still retexturing, but you're not having to make these from scratch. You're just kind of mixing and matching what's already there, because a lot of people just don't have or don't really care to spend a lot of time on retexturing stuff, because it can be really hard to make something from scratch, and a lot of people don't have the time to do that, or the skills or the programs required. And so this is just a cool way to make custom armors in the game without having to create anything completely from the ground up. You can just take what's already there and just sort of mold it to however you want it to look. And so there we go. We've got the leather scale, we've got the chainmail underneath it, and then finally the yellow gambeson. And let's actually go a step further, and we're going to make this gambeson a different color. So what we can do is, we're basically working on a completely separate layer here. So whatever we do to this one, it's only going to show up on those little parts. What I recommend you do anyways, though, is just duplicate this layer in case. So if you ever need to come back to this for something, you have it. But we're going to just work on this one, and we're just going to go hue saturation, and we can just kind of play with this and see what looks good. I'm going to go with sort of a purple, because one of the characters on my Clash of Kings series is House Malister. And I think it would be cool to make him like a custom Riverlands armor, since he doesn't have one right now. So we want to find like a nice purpley color. I actually liked it better at 140, and then we're going to desaturate it just a little bit, because it's a little bit too bright for Game of Thrones. Everything's kind of dirty and dingy in Game of Thrones, so that looks pretty good there. So we've got the purple gambeson now, and so basically we can just flatten this image, or merge the layers down either way. So you can go right click, merge down, because this one's hidden it won't do it, but if we do it now we can. Or you can go image, flatten image, and it'll just merge all the layers together. But before you export a DDS texture image, you need to have a single layer. So what I recommend you do is flatten the image like I did there. Go to File, export it, and we're going to call this Riverlands. Let's call it Riverlands Malister Diffuse. So Malister. We'll export that. And on this thing here, what you're going to want to do is leave this at none, leave that at default, but make sure you generate bitmaps. That's going to be really important. So make sure you do that. Basically, what a bitmap is it's several successive layers of smaller and smaller versions of the same texture. And so when you open this, you don't need those because you're only going to work on the main layer. But when you're exporting this, the game needs the bitmaps, so you need to make sure you generate them. So you hit OK, it'll generate that. And then what I suggest you do from there, if you're going to continue to work on this and fine tune it, is I suggest you Control Z and get your layers back, and then save your GIMP file like this so that you can work on the independent layers. And then whenever you need to export, just reflatten the image, export it, and then Control Z back and save again. That way you always have the multiple layers to work on if you want to continue to fine tune the texture, but you're not messing up your DDS files by having several different layers in them. Basically, what'll happen if you try to export it without combining these is you're only going to export one layer, so you'll basically get this in the game, or you'll get this layer, depending on whatever layer it's selected in that drop-down box. You're not going to have the correct texture though. So I'm not going to save this because this is just sort of a one-off for the video, but you get the idea. And actually, you know what? I'm going to make a quick tweak to this because I think that this would look better as part of the Gambison as well. So I'm actually going to delete this scaled collar, and we're going to get the purple Gambison one in there. And that looks pretty good. Let's move over to here and do it for this one as well. And yeah, so just erasing, it's really not challenging at all. You don't need any real Photoshop skills for this, just a steady hand with the eraser tool. Or again, if you don't like using the eraser, you can just free select it and then delete it. But we're just basically getting rid of one layer on top of whatever we want from underneath. So let's flatten this once again, and we'll export it one more time. So we'll export that again. I like to do it this way and make sure that it's exporting those or generating these bitmaps, because sometimes by default this isn't selected, and so if you just overwrite, it doesn't save that. So we'll go with that there. And so this layer's done. We can get rid of it. Now, because we changed the material from chainmail to Gambison, obviously the texture of that material is going to be slightly different. And so we can see on this one that the leather flaps here are very smooth, but on this one the Gambison is kind of rough and bumpy. So basically what we're going to want to do is exactly what we just did for the other texture. Is we're going to want to erase everything we replaced here, or everything we replaced there, here as well. And that way the actual, unfortunately, the word texture works the best here, but it's not the same sort of texture that you think of when you're applying it to a modeling game. This is like the bumpy type texture. So it's kind of difficult for me to think of a better word for that, but the feel of the surface is different, I guess, and so we want to reflect that through our normal maps. And so we're going to do the same thing, is we're just going to get rid of the flat leather and replace it with the bumpy Gambison. And so again, just erasing, nothing special, nothing tricky. So we'll just erase, erase, erase. And I am usually a little bit more efficient about it than this, but I am trying to show you guys how I do this, so I am not just speeding through it, although I am obviously cutting a little bit of corners where normally if I was doing this for a series or something, I would be a little bit more precise just so it looked a little bit nicer. And obviously you're going to want to spend a little bit more time on yours than I am on mine if you really want it to look good. But it's, again, not challenging at all. Just about anybody can do this. I should say everybody, because it's, again, just erasing. That's all it is. And then we got to do the collar as well. So I think right about here is where that ends. That looks pretty good, so we'll get rid of all that. And then we'll get rid of all of this. And I think we're done with that. So once again, merge this down. And we've got, again, Gambison, leather scale, chainmail, gambeson, gambeson. So once again, we're going to export this. I'm going to change the name to Riverlands Malister again. And we'll leave the normal there because obviously this is a normal map and we want to have the name reflect that. Make sure we're generating the bitmaps, hit OK. And our normal maps are done. So lastly, we have the specular maps. And so basically the way specular maps work is anything that's black is going to be very matte finish. So it's not going to shine at all. It's going to be just not shiny. And then whatever is very light is going to be shiny, with white obviously being the shiniest possible. And usually in game that looks very, very bad, very like blinding. So as you can see here, on this particular layer, the only thing that's really shiny is the chainmail, and on this layer the only thing shiny are these little scales. Now we got rid of a lot of chainmail, so what we need to do is erase all of this, because we don't want that collar to be shiny now that it's cloth and not metal. Got to be careful of that. We don't want that scale there. So let's erase all this. Need to be a little bit more precise with this, but again, not super precise. Just making sure everything here is kind of dark. That went a little bit too far again. So I'm actually going to take the smudge tool, and we're just going to smudge some black over it. Just blend that black over it to hide it. And then we'll get back to the eraser. We'll erase all this. Apparently that one's a bit shiny on there. Interesting. Well, I'm actually going to just blend black over that too. And you know what? It might be easier just brush it. Yeah, we'll just paintbrush it black. That's easier. So we'll get rid of all this. None of that really needs to be all that shiny. I guess we'll leave the... Did I do that? I might have done that. Huh. No, I guess the belt's just not that shiny. That's weird. I'm going to just leave it alone. And then we're going to... Let's see, is there anything there? No, it's just all black. So I'm just going to use the paintbrush again to paint over this. Or you can erase it. Doesn't matter. We're just making sure it's black because we don't want shiny cloth. We want very flat, soft, padded looking cloth. And so, again, not really sweating this too much. Just making sure it's, more or less correct. Obviously, the graphics in Warband are not the greatest, so your retextures do not need to be super precise, because the models in the game are so small that most of the time you won't even be able to see any mistakes if you had made them. So we'll rename this, and that's pretty much it for our retexturing. Now we just need to put these textures into OpenBRF and apply them to the model. And from there we can work on getting that into the game. So let's get rid of GIMP now. We're kind of done with it. And the really cool thing about working on, especially with this mod, is so many different armors use the same model that there's a lot of mixing and matching you can do. For example, you've got the Riverlands here. They've got two different armors with... Oh, that's a custom one I did. With... the same model. You can see they're just different textures on the same model, and that's how we were able to do this. If you go up to the north, they're actually using the same one as well, just with, different textures. And even the Northern Karstark armor is the same. And so there's several armors that use the same model with, various textures, so that you can really mix and match all kinds of different pieces, whether they be, different textures or different, colors and graphics and things, or actual pieces of the armors themselves. There's a lot of cool stuff you can do. So let's grab the Riverlands Heavy, and we'll actually copy both of these. So we're gonna grab both. We're gonna go duplicate, and we're gonna move this down underneath the custom, and then we're gonna group rename this to Riverlands Malister. And so you can see there it renamed both. And then we want to do is go to textures, and we want to go up here, and we want to import all the textures we just made. So we want to go to new texture, browse, and then we want to search, and let's just type in Riverlands, and all of the ones we just made should come up. I have this sorted by newest first, so obviously all the ones we just created will be up top, but you might need to search the full name to find it, but there they are. So you hit open, And then I would suggest leaving this unticked. You can do this. I mean, it's certainly possible to use this and do everything correctly. I just find it a little bit faster to do it this way. So you got all 3 files there. Hit OK. You'll see them entered at the top there. And then what we want to do is go to Materials, and you're going to want to find, well, let's go this way. Find the original model, and then go to Material. Cancel that. I don't know why it's taking me to a different material or a different folder, but it should be right here, or there it is. So that's the model we're using. Obviously the material is going to be very similar to what we want to use. So I suggest just duplicate that rather than making brand new materials, and go on down here. We'll rename this to Riverlands Malister as well. There we go. And then all we need to do is go to our textures, and I guess we can just go to rename and grab the Malister part. You don't even need to grab the whole thing. Just, copy that little bit, and in here, obviously we don't want Riverlands Heavy diffuse, we want Riverlands Malister diffuse. So we'll just go ahead and replace the _heavy with _Malister. And then the same thing here, we don't want Riverlands Heavy normal, we want Riverlands Malister normal, and Riverlands Malister specular. And so that's going to call all of our files now. You may be wondering why this is like a white and purple checker. That's because GIMP will compress the DDS files in a different format than OpenBRF can read. So they'll show up like this in OpenBRF, which can be a little bit frustrating and difficult to work with. But in-game, they'll show up just fine. So don't worry if you're getting this. It happens if you're using GIMP. I don't know if it happens if you're using Photoshop. But if you're using Photoshop and you get this, I would assume it's the same issue. It's just the way that the files are compressed, but the game can read them just fine, so do not sweat it. So there's our new material, and all we need to do now is apply that to the new model. So obviously our new material is Riverlands _Malister instead of Heavy. And the way you can make sure that that's reading properly is you can see that it's referencing your correct texture right here. And so obviously it's it's applying the texture to the model, but we can't see it because of the compression issue. So if we control click these, we can see that that's how it would look if we were to use those shoulders. We can also do, for example, this type here. Actually, you know what? I know from experience that the bicep plates on these will clip with this model. So I'm going to find a different one that doesn't. And it's part of the Karstark armors. I believe it's this one. Yeah, see how it doesn't have the bicep plate? So this one won't clip with the armor. So we're going to duplicate that one. We're going to bring this on down to our other thing. If you hold Alt and press the down arrow, you can move stuff around, or up to move it up. And so we're going to drop this right here. And we're going to rename that. You can rename stuff the same as another thing. So we're going to call this Riverlands Malister 0.1 as well. And, oh, I didn't move it down far enough. So basically we can control click either one of these and see how they look. I think that would be pretty cool. I like the northern plate on the Riverlands armor, but obviously these shoulders are pretty cool too. Much more fish-like. So if you were making like a Tully armor, that would be pretty cool. But obviously the Malisters, their sigil is an eagle, a white eagle on like a purple background. So the fish scales don't quite apply as well. But they are still a Riverlands faction, so I think that looks pretty cool. We'll see how it looks with the actual texture on it. But yeah, I think we'll just delete this. We'll get rid of that one, and we'll use this one. And pretty much done. So what you're going to want to do is go to File, and basically just save. Before you do that, though, I would suggest you back up the original ACOK build-wit. Just, copy it and change the name to, like, build-wit backup or something. So in case something goes wrong, which in doing this, there's very, very few mistakes that you could make that would cause, any serious issues. But I would suggest, backing up the file before you save it. So we'll just go File, Save. I'm feeling a little bit reckless today. We're just going to go for it. So this is all saved now. And now we want to open up our Morgh's Mountain Blade editor. So we'll hit Accept. And you'll land on this screen here, or more likely, if you haven't used this before, it might take you to this. Basically what you want to do, make sure that you're using text compiled files only this one. Don't worry about this one, don't worry about that one. And then don't worry about either of these. You're only concerned with this here. And so what you're going to want to do is just put the directory of your Clash of Kings module folder in here. So you're going to want to go to browse and find it. I'm not going to bother with that. Hopefully you guys can track it down. It's in your, if you're using the Steam one, it's in your Steam Apps Common Mountain Blade Warband modules folder. Basically exactly where you found the, the textures and stuff. But you're choosing the module, not the files in the module. So this is the Clash of Kings 2.2 folder. Save that. It will tell you if you've selected the wrong folder, and then you'll just have to find it. And then this is how you edit troops, parties, party templates, factions. But more importantly for this one, we're going to do the item editor. I am going to do a troop editing tutorial at some point, but for now we're just going to focus on the items. And so what I suggest you do is, and I'm really familiar with this, so I don't necessarily need to, but you have a bunch of different armors here. So whatever you base the armor that you're making off of, basically, so for us it's Riverlands Heavy. Find that armor in here. Riverlands_heavy. And there we go. We have heavy with no shoulders, heavy, just heavy, heavy with the neck, and we have Riverlands Heavy plate, which I think is a custom one I made. So let's go with, I think just straight up Riverlands Heavy is the one we use, so we'll do that one right there. And then you're going to want to go to Add, and this will basically turn whichever item you chose into a template for a new item. So we're going to call this ITM. We'll keep the same prefix as everything else in the mod. Riverlands_Malister. And then we're going to call this Malice. That's not how you spell it. Not quite. There we go. Malister_plate armor. And if you press space rather than underscore, it's still going to put an underscore there, so it gets rid of the potential for that error, because if you put a space there, the game won't be able to recognize the rest of the name. So it will not let you put a space down. It will always put an underscore, so you don't need to worry about that. And then we're just going to copy and paste that in. You can put an S here if you want. I never bother. And then this is really important right here. The mesh name needs to reference your mesh right here. So for us, that's also Riverlands Malister. You see how we're just kind of keeping with the theme there so we don't forget? Riverlands_Malister. Don't hit add, don't hit delete, hit update. If you hit add, it will add another mesh to this list, and the game will try to render both at once. So you want to hit update, and it will replace whatever mesh was there with your mesh. Don't worry about any of this. Just, replace the one here. There should only be one, and it should be the one you just made. Now then, these values here are exactly what you would imagine. This is how much the game, or this is how much the shops will charge you for it. This is how much the armor weighs. This is how frequently you will find it. I find the most common abundance for like your average item to be about 100. So we'll just make this one 100. This is the head armor value, body armor, leg armor. Difficulty is the strength requirement to wear the armor. And then this is reserved for weapons, so don't mess with those. Then you've got modifiers, so you can find rusty Malister plate armor or battered Malister plate armor, whatever you check these here. I think certain ones are associated to armors, certain ones are associated to weapons. So I would tend to stick with whatever the original item had, whatever your template item is. I wouldn't mess with those unless you're sure that one applies to an armor, because if you do like sharp, for example, I think it's going to give you like +5 damage to your, your body armor, which doesn't make sense. And then the capabilities are all for weapons as well. And then, just make sure you've got body armor checked, or whatever type of item you're using, head armor, foot armor, whatever you're making. And then merchandise will allow it to be sold as an item in a shop, or you could uncheck that one and make it, I think there's a unique, so unique would mean that nobody's going to have it unless you cheat it into your inventory, which I'll show you guys how to do as well. I don't know exactly what that one does, but I would suggest leaving that checked as well. And so because we added some plate armor to this, let's up the body armor to like 55, and we'll say 25. We'll go 55 and 20. How about that? And then we'll make the strength requirement, I don't know, I think 14 is good. 14 strength to use this. And then, so once you're done, hit add item. If you click off of this at any point, it's going to reset. It's going to go back to whatever you clicked here, and you're going to lose all this. So don't click off of this item until you're done here and you hit add. And then it'll confirm that it's adding a new entry. And you can see at 1224 we have our Riverlands Malister plate armor. So we're done. All we need to do is hit save changes. Again, recommend backing up your item kinds folder. This program will do it for you. It'll even timestamp it. I'm going to hit no because I like to live dangerously. But I highly suggest that you back up yours. So then we can close this because we're done here. Now, this next part is not necessary, but I highly suggest you do it because it'll make it much easier for you to get your armor into the game. So what you're going to want to do is get back into your Clash of Kings folder, and you're going to want to go down to the menus.txt, and again, back this thing up. So this is how I like to back mine up. This is backup original. That means that's the very first original one that came with the mod, and then we've got menus backup, which is like another change I made, and then this is the current version that I'm on. And so I'm going to open this in Sublime Text, which I'll have a link for that for you guys as well. I'm using a customized version of it, and you can see I've already got the tab open. But this is going to be much easier for you to work in than like Notepad, for example. And so you need to find, and I unfortunately lost it when I clicked that. So let's see if I go back to here. There it is. MNO cheat find item next range. So you need to find that. Then there's going to be a whole lot of numbers that don't make any sense to you, and that's totally fine because you only need to figure out which one you need to change. So there's going to be a big long string of numbers, or there's going to be a couple little numbers, one big long string, another bunch of little ones, and then the same big long string that you saw before, and then the third big chunk is going to be something completely different. And so this number is the one you're going to want to tweak, and this corresponds to how many items are in the game. So since we've only created one new item, we're going to turn that 4 into a 5. Now if you made 2 items, you're going to change that to a 6, or just, add however many items that you made onto here. And then you can see when this was a 4 and I selected this, it also highlighted this as well. And that's why programs like this are really handy, because it makes stuff a lot easier to track. Because we're changing this number, we also need to change this one. And so those are the only 2 we need to tweak. I completely lost that number. Did I delete it on accident? I may have deleted it. I made a boo-boo. I did, yeah. I don't know why I hit delete there. Okay, so backspace 75, and then we'll find it again right here, and hit 5 again. That's all you need to do. Now your item will be able to be found in the cheat menu, and it'll be a lot easier for you to get it onto your character. If you don't do this, you can still get it, but you're going to have to try to find it at a vendor somewhere, which can be very difficult. If you made your item unique, it would be impossible without this. So we're going to go ahead and save, and again, make sure you've backed yours up. I don't back up anything because I'm used to this. And then we can close that. We're done there. Done here too. We can basically close all of this now. Never mind the video rendering in the background. And so let's go ahead and open up our game. So open it up, hit play. If you're going to use the cheat menu method, make sure you go into configure and you have cheats enabled. If you don't know how to do that, you just literally hit configure, enable cheats, and hit OK. And so I'll see you guys in game. Okay, so now we're in game. The first thing I need to do is get my test character strong enough to be able to use the armor, so I'm going to hit Control X here a couple times and cheat his strength up. And then we need to go to Control Tilde, that's the key underneath your escape key with the squiggly line on it. And we want to type in cheat menu with no spaces. And we'll hit enter there. And then we go to camp, and you can see cheat menu really big. We'll click it, and then we go to find an item. We'll move on down the list. And this should be the last one if you're playing Clash of Kings, but depending on the mod, it may be different. Then we'll go to choose from this range, and we'll get a whole bunch of debug stuff that doesn't matter. And scroll on down to the bottom of your thing, and that's where you'll find your armor. And if you did everything correctly, it will be there, and you can put it on, and you can check it out. And if you cheat yourself in some money, you can buy it. So I'll give myself an extra 4,000 there to purchase it. And then let's take a look at it in the party screen. So there we have it. In hindsight, I think leaving the sleeves chainmail would have looked better, but point is, the thing works, and So there we have it. Hopefully yours came out too. Again, if you followed along, it should have, but if you ran into an error or something, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'll do my best to help you out. And I guess from here I'd like to show you guys how to do like customizing the units in the game and stuff, but that'll obviously be a different video. Feel free to make other suggestions in regard to other Warband modding things as well. I'll be happy to try to do whatever you guys would like. Keep in mind though, I'm not like a 3D modeler, so I can't really make new armors from scratch. But I can do other cool stuff in Warband, so if you guys would like to see that, feel free to let me know. Thanks for sticking around. I know this has been a pretty lengthy tutorial, but it's kind of a long process. It's all really easy. None of it really takes any any particular skills, but it is a little bit tedious here and there, and it definitely requires some patience. But otherwise, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I had a great time doing this tutorial for you, and I look forward to seeing you guys back here for the next video.